"Can I sit here forever?" asked the alien princess. No one dared move. Alien delegates moved with careful, deliberate motions, their shapes varying from the crystalline Eldrith, whose bodies caught and refracted light like diamonds, to the floating, tentacled Mirrans, who whispered in a language of musical tones. In the center of it all stood the throne of the council, a massive platform where the oldest and wisest of each species were seated. Today, a new voice was expected to be heard, a voice that many delegates doubted would have any real impact. Lyra, the young alien princess, had barely stepped off the transport pod when she felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her. Her skin glowed faintly with shifting colors, betraying her nervousness. Every glance from the council elders reminded her of the gap between her small, inexperienced self and the authority she was meant to wield. She had been taught the proper ways to bow, speak, and negotiate, yet all of it felt distant compared to the curiosity bubbling inside her. She longed to see the universe not through protocols and rules, but through her own eyes. The formalities dragged on for what felt like hours. Delegates presented reports on trade routes, defense strategies, and the latest discoveries in distant star systems. Lyra's eyes wandered over the windows that opened onto the void of space. She was fascinated by the twinkling of countless stars and the slow dance of distant planets. She imagined herself traveling among them, not constrained by royal duties but free to explore, to learn, to discover. A sudden impulse led her to slip quietly away from the main hall. She floated down the polished corridor, her movements graceful but silent. Each step took her further from the eyes of her elders and closer to the unknown. She reached a smaller observation deck that overlooked the fleet. Here the stars seemed closer, the silence more profound, and the air seemed to vibrate with a quiet energy that filled her with wonder. Sitting alone by the panoramic window, she noticed a figure hunched over a small console, sketching shapes in the air with delicate gestures. He was human, she realized, and not just any human. His presence was calm, his eyes clear and focused, his movements precise but relaxed. He did not seem to be paying attention to the pomp and ceremony, and yet there was an air of confidence about him that made the princess pause. Lyra hesitated for a moment, then floated closer. "Can I sit here forever?" she asked. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper, but carried a sense of curiosity that seemed to demand attention. For a heartbeat, there was silence. The humans were rare in the council chambers, and for a young princess to address one so directly was unusual. Far away in the main hall, delegates paused mid-motion, and even the elders' eyes flickered in her direction. None dared move or intervene. The human looked up, his face breaking into a gentle smile. "Forever is a long time," he said softly, "but for now you may sit." He gestured to the space beside him, his hand steady, welcoming. Lyra floated closer, settling down with a grace that reminded one of a drifting star. She watched the human's fingers as they danced through the holographic display, tracing lines that formed star systems, planets, and unknown territories. She was mesmerized. "I'm Lyra," she said, feeling the urge to introduce herself properly, even if the human likely already knew her title. I wanted to see something different. All the hallways and formalities, they feel so heavy sometimes." The human nodded knowingly. "I understand," he replied. "Sometimes it's easier to learn from quiet places than from loud halls. I'm Elias Kane." The princess studied him carefully. There was something different about humans, something she had sensed even before arriving. While aliens often relied on strict protocol, hierarchy, and formality, humans seemed simple, yet capable of seeing beyond rules. They observed, they listened, they acted. There was a balance to them, a rare kind of confidence paired with curiosity that Lyra had not encountered elsewhere. Elias noticed her gaze and smiled. "Do you like stars?" he asked, pointing to the infinite expanse beyond the glass. Lyra's eyes widened. "I love them," she whispered. "They are endless, so much to see, so much to know." Kane's fingers traced a path through a nearby holographic star map. "Do you know about the Perseid cluster? It's not far from here, but very few come close because of the unstable energy fields." "Humans, we like to take risks sometimes, to learn what others fear." Lyra tilted her head. "Humans take risks?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Even when it could be dangerous?" "Yes," Kane replied. "We explore, we try to understand. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we succeed. But we always try. Fear cannot stop us if there is knowledge to gain." The princess considered this. Her whole life had been about following rules, avoiding mistakes, and maintaining appearances. Here was a human, someone from a species she barely understood, explaining something that sounded almost impossible to her elders. A willingness to embrace risk for the sake of curiosity. "I wish I could do that," she said softly, more to herself than to Cain. "I wish I could see the universe without everyone watching, without being told what is right or wrong." Elias turned his gaze toward her, his expression kind but firm. "Lyra, curiosity is not about ignoring rules. It's about understanding them and then choosing your path wisely. You don't have to follow blindly. You can learn and you can decide." Lyra felt a warmth spread through her. No one in her court had ever spoken to her like that. Everyone told her what she must do, not what she could do. The words of this human traveler were simple, yet they opened doors she didn't even know existed. She leaned closer, studying his hands as they moved over the holographic display. "How did humans become like this? So brave, so patient?" Elias smiled faintly. "We learn from our mistakes, from each other, from the world around us. Every failure teaches us something. Every friend teaches us something. And every star we reach shows us that there is more to understand. That's our strength. That's our way." The princess floated quietly, absorbing every word. Around them, the council chambers continued their formal meetings, but here in this quiet corner of the ship, time seemed to slow. She felt as though she had discovered a hidden truth that no book or lesson had ever taught her. Humans, she realized, were not just another species in the galaxy. They were different. They saw the universe as a canvas, not a chain. For hours, she asked questions about Earth, about human explorers, about ships that traveled farther than anyone thought possible. Cain answered patiently, showing her maps of galaxies, stories of distant worlds, and the endless human desire to understand what lay beyond. He spoke not with pride, but with a quiet honesty that fascinated her. Finally, Lyra leaned back, her glowing skin dimming slightly in thought. I don't want to leave," she admitted. "I want to learn more. I want to sit here forever." Cain chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Forever is impossible," he said gently. "But we can make the time we have count. You can learn and you can see, and when the time comes, you will be ready for the rest of your world." Lyra felt a strange comfort in his words. For the first time in her young life, she felt understood. Not just seen as a princess, a duty, or a symbol, but seen as herself. A small, curious being in a vast universe, capable of understanding, learning, and choosing her own path. Outside the window, the stars continued their endless dance, each one a mystery waiting to be uncovered. Lyra glanced at Cain again, a small smile forming on her lips. "Will you teach me?" she asked. Elias Cain looked at her steadily. "Yes," he said simply. "I will teach you, and in time you will teach others. That is how humans, how all of us make a difference." The princess nodded, feeling a spark of something she had never felt before. Hope. Here, in a quiet corner of a ship full of protocol and politics, she had found something far more valuable. A human, with simple words and steady actions, had opened a door to a universe she had only dreamed of. For the first time, Lyra felt that she was not bound by duty alone. She was free to explore, to question, to learn. And as long as Cain was beside her, even if only for a little while, the stars no longer seemed distant or intimidating. They seemed like a promise. And so, in the quiet of the observation deck, the princess and the human traveler sat together, gazing at the infinite stars. Around them, the galaxy went on with its chaos and its rules. But here, in this small corner of space, curiosity, patience, and courage had found a home. Lyra felt a thrill at the thought that maybe, just maybe, she could change herself, her world, and perhaps even the galaxy one small step at a time. The council would call her back soon. Protocol would demand her presence, duty would remind her of her responsibilities. But for now, in this fleeting moment, she sat quietly, learning, dreaming, and understanding something profound. That humans were not just survivors in the galaxy. They were teachers, guides, and a reminder that courage and curiosity could light the darkest of spaces. Observation deck remained quiet long after the princess, and the human traveler first spoke. The distant stars glittered like scattered jewels, casting faint reflections across Lyra's shifting skin. She had spent hours listening to Elias Cain, absorbing stories of faraway worlds, human explorers, and civilizations that valued curiosity over rigid tradition. Each tale made her heart beat faster, filling her with wonder and a longing she had never felt before. Yet even as she sat, her mind began to wander to the council, to the formalities waiting for her. Duty was a chain, invisible but heavy, reminding her that the time she spent here was fleeting. Still, she could not tear herself away. Kane's presence, calm and patient, was a strange kind of anchor, grounding her in a moment of freedom she had never known. "I want to understand more," she said softly, her glowing skin pulsing with quiet excitement. "Not just the stars, but humans, how they think, how they feel. Everything seems so different." Kane glanced at her, his eyes thoughtful. "Humans are different in many ways," he said slowly. "Some of it is instinct, some is learned, but mostly it comes from choices. We make decisions, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but we learn from them. That's what shapes us." Lyra considered this. "Choices," she repeated, the word feeling strange and powerful on her tongue. In her palace, choices were limited. Every step was guided by advisors, teachers, and protocols designed to protect her, or so they said. Yet now she saw that choices could be more than rules. They could be tools to shape who she wanted to be. Kane smiled gently, noticing the change in her expression. "Do you want to try?" he asked. "Not just listen, but think about what you would do in certain situations." Lyra's eyes widened. "Yes," she said immediately. "I want to learn that." He nodded and projected a small holographic simulation of a distant planet. The surface was rugged, with high cliffs, deep chasms, and unpredictable weather. "This planet has dangerous storms," he explained. "A small crew is sent to study a rare crystal that only appears during the storm season. They can either take the risk and gather it or wait for safer conditions, but the crystal may vanish. What would you do?" Lyra floated closer, studying the hologram carefully. I would try to go," she said after a moment. "If the crystal is rare, it might disappear forever. Sometimes you have to take a risk to gain knowledge, but I would plan carefully and I would make sure my crew is safe." Kane's smile widened. "Exactly. Humans often take calculated risks. We weigh the danger against the potential gain. Knowledge is worth effort, but not at any cost." Lyra felt a thrill. Here in this small room, she was learning something no tutor in her palace could teach her. Not just knowledge, but judgment. She began to see how humans thought differently. They acted not only with caution, but with courage. They considered consequences, but were not paralyzed by fear. As the discussion continued, Lyra began asking more questions about human culture, about how humans lived and cooperated, about why they explored unknown worlds even when the dangers were high. Kane answered each question carefully, sometimes showing holographic images of planets, sometimes describing stories of Earth explorers, and sometimes just explaining the way humans felt. "You value teamwork," Lyra said thoughtfully, "but also independence. How can both exist?" Kane leaned back, fingers resting on the console. "Humans rely on each other, but we also trust individuals to act. We know that no one person can know everything, but everyone can contribute. That balance, that's how we solve problems, especially unexpected ones." Lyra's skin pulsed with a brighter glow. "I have never been trusted like that," she admitted softly. "In my palace, everyone tells me what to do, even my decisions are guided." Kane looked at her gently. "Being trusted is a responsibility, yes, but it is also a chance to grow. You have the ability to think, to decide, and to act. That is a gift, and it is rare in the galaxy." Lyra floated quietly, absorbing the words. She realized that humans were not just curious and brave. They were mentors, teaching through example, through patience, through shared experience. And right now, Kane was teaching her more than any textbook or advisor could. The hours passed quickly. Outside the observation deck, the council continued their discussions, unaware of the small scene unfolding in a quiet corner. Lyra asked about interstellar exploration, about alien species, about conflicts and alliances humans had faced. Kane explained in simple terms, emphasizing human ingenuity, empathy, and the ability to adapt to unexpected circumstances. Suddenly, a faint alarm echoed through the deck. It was a low, subtle warning, not the loud alarms of the main hall. Kane's fingers moved swiftly over the console, scanning data. "Nothing to worry about," he said, noticing the concern on Lyra's face. "Just a minor fluctuation in the ship's energy shield. It happens sometimes when multiple fleets are near unstable star systems." Lyra watched him with admiration. He didn't panic, didn't shout orders or blame anyone. He simply observed, analyzed, and acted. This was another lesson in human behavior, calm, rational thinking under pressure. Humans are not always the strongest, she said, her voice quiet, but they seem unshakable. How can one person remain so calm? Kane chuckled softly. Experience helps, but also perspective. You learn to focus on what you can control and not waste energy on what you cannot. That is how humans survive in uncertain situations. Lyra nodded, feeling the truth in his words. She realized that bravery was not just about fighting or winning. It was about understanding, patience, and the courage to act even when the outcome was unknown. As the stars outside continued to shimmer, Lyra began to speak about her own world. She told Kane about the palace, the duties, and the expectations that weighed on her. She confessed her fears, her frustrations, and her longing to see the galaxy beyond walls of gold and silver. Kane listened quietly, never interrupting, never judging. "You are not alone in feeling this way," he said finally. "Many humans feel trapped by expectations too, but we learn to find moments of freedom, moments where curiosity leads the way. You can do the same. Even as a princess, you can make choices, explore, and learn." Lyra's heart lifted. These were simple words, yet they carried a profound truth. Freedom was not just about leaving the palace. It was about perspective, courage, and the willingness to act. Kane had given her a gift more valuable than any jewel in her treasury: understanding. For the next several hours, they spoke, explored holographic worlds, and shared thoughts on life, knowledge, and courage. Lyra's skin glowed brighter with each story, each lesson, each answer. She felt alive in a way she had never known. The weight of her royal obligations seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of purpose and wonder. When finally the council's official messenger arrived to summon her back, Lyra hesitated. She had grown attached to this quiet space, to Kane's calm presence, and to the lessons that felt so real and meaningful. She floated toward the human, her eyes reflecting the starfield outside. "Must I go?" she asked softly. "I do not want to leave this place yet." "There is still so much to learn." Kane smiled, a quiet warmth in his expression. "You must return for now," he said. "But you can carry what you've learned, and when you return here or wherever your curiosity leads, you will remember these lessons. You are capable of more than you think." Lyra nodded, feeling a strange mixture of longing and determination. She knew that her time in this quiet corner was temporary, but its impact would last far longer. As she floated back to the main hall, she carried with her a newfound sense of courage, curiosity, and the understanding that humans were not only explorers. They were guides, teachers, and living proof that even one individual could inspire change. Even from a distance, she could see the human traveler, still calm, still observing the stars. And in that quiet moment, she made a promise to herself. She would not be limited by fear, expectation, or rules. She would learn, explore, and perhaps in time teach others as Kane had taught her. And so, the young princess returned to her duties, her heart alight with curiosity, her mind brimming with questions, and her spirit quietly inspired. The council could not see it yet, but change had begun. Through one human's calm patience and thoughtful guidance, Lyra had glimpsed the potential of a new way of living, one that valued courage, understanding, and the freedom to explore. For the first time, Lyra did not feel like a princess trapped by expectations. She felt like a student of the universe, a traveler in thought if not yet in deed, ready to face the challenges of her world and beyond. And as the distant stars shimmered and the ships of the council floated silently, she carried a quiet certainty. The universe was vast, but she was ready to meet it, one question, one choice, and one moment of courage at a time. The calm of the observation deck was suddenly broken by a sharp alarm that echoed throughout the flagship. Red lights flashed along the walls, and the low hum of the ship's engines shifted into a tense vibration. Lyra's heart leapt into her throat, and for the first time in their quiet conversations, she saw a flicker of urgency in Kane's usually calm eyes. "What is happening?" Lyra asked, her voice trembling slightly. Kane didn't panic. He moved swiftly to a console, fingers flying over the controls with practiced ease. "A spatial anomaly has appeared near the fleet," he explained. "It's unstable and the energy readings are spiking. If it expands, it could affect the entire council fleet." Lyra's skin brightened nervously, her luminescence reflecting the flashing alarms. "The fleet, all the council ships, what do we do?" Kane paused for a moment, analyzing the holographic map of the surrounding star systems. He gestured to Lyra. "Stay with me, watch and learn. The first step is to remain calm. Panic will only make things worse." Lyra nodded, forcing herself to breathe steadily. She had seen him handle problems with patience, but this was different. Lives were at stake, and the scale of the danger was enormous. Yet Kane remained calm, moving through the holographic display with a quiet focus that seemed almost impossible. Outside the observation deck, alarms echoed from every corner of the flagship. Delegates hurried through corridors, some shouting in their alien languages, others directing fleets remotely. The Mirrans twitched nervously, their musical tones rising in anxious bursts. Crystal and Eldrith leaned rigidly over their consoles, their bodies reflecting the flashing lights with cold, precise movements. Kane pointed to the anomaly on the holographic map. "It's forming an energy vortex," he said. "If it reaches full size, it could disrupt the shield matrix of the fleet. Standard protocol would be to wait for the fleet commanders to coordinate, but they are indecisive. We don't have that time." Lyra floated closer, her fear mixing with fascination. "What can we do?" she asked. "We act," Kane said simply. "We coordinate a path through the anomaly and guide the ship safely. The key is precision, speed, and communication." Lyra felt a thrill of awe. Humans, she realized again, were different not because they were the strongest or the largest, but because they had the courage to act when others hesitated. Kane's calm decisiveness, even in the face of potential disaster, was remarkable. "Can I help?" she asked, her voice steady despite the racing of her heart. Kane studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, you've learned from observation, now apply it. I need you to relay the fleet positions and energy levels as I calculate the safest paths. Your attention to detail will be critical." Lyra's heart pounded as she began relaying information, her small hands moving over the console with surprising confidence. The alien delegates around them paused to watch, unsure why a young princess and a human were suddenly coordinating the fleet, while seasoned commanders argued endlessly in the main hall. Minutes passed, each one stretching with tension. The anomaly pulsed and swirled on the holographic map, unpredictable and dangerous. Kane and Lyra worked as a team, their focus absolute. Kane guided ships through narrow channels, avoiding the unstable energy fields. Lyra's careful observations and quick calculations ensured that no vessel veered too close to danger. "Fleet Section Delta, adjust heading by 2 degrees, Lyra called, her voice calm but firm. "Energy fluctuations rising. Move now." The response came through the communication link, crisp and quick. Kane smiled at her. "Exactly, keep it up. Your timing is perfect." As they continued, Lyra felt a sense of purpose she had never known. She was not just a princess, she was a participant, a contributor. Every decision mattered, every action made a difference. The lesson Kane had taught her, courage balanced with thought, was now being put to the test. Suddenly, the anomaly shifted violently, sending a wave of energy toward the fleet. Some ships were caught in the pulse, their shields flickering dangerously. Panic rose among the delegates, many of whom froze, unsure how to respond. Kane's fingers moved faster, issuing precise commands. "All ships engage stabilizers. Delta Group, adjust shields by 30%. Lyra, track the pulse and tell me when it dissipates." Lyra's eyes scanned the holographic map, noting the changes in energy levels and the positions of the ships. "Pulse is weakening," she called out. "It's moving away from the fleet core," Kane nodded. "Good, keep monitoring." The Council fleet slowly adjusted, following the paths Kane calculated and Lyra relayed. One by one, ships avoided the worst of the anomaly's energy surges. The Eldrith commanders stared in disbelief, unable to comprehend how a human and a young princess could manage what their centuries of experience could not. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the anomaly's energy dissipated. The fleet was safe, shields stabilized, and the immediate danger had passed. The alarms ceased, replaced by the soft hum of the engines returning to normal. Lyra floated back, her body glowing brightly with relief and exhilaration. Kane leaned back in his chair, a faint smile on his face. "You did very well," he said quietly. "I couldn't have done it alone." Lyra blinked, still catching her breath. We saved them all," she whispered. Kane nodded. "Yes, and you contributed just as much as I did. Remember this moment. Courage and careful thinking together make a difference. Humans rely on this combination, and now you know it too." The alien delegates approached slowly, curiosity and awe evident in their expressions. Even the Eldrith, usually cold and critical, inclined their crystalline heads in acknowledgement. The Mirrans, musical tones conveyed a mix of admiration and surprise. One of the senior council members spoke, her voice formal but tinged with astonishment. Princess Lyra, Captain Kane, your actions have prevented a disaster. Your ability to coordinate and act decisively is unprecedented. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of pride and humility. She had never imagined that she could inspire such respect, especially from those who had doubted her abilities simply because of her age and rank. Kane placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You see," he said softly, "courage is not about size, rank, or authority. It is about action, observation, and willingness to face the unknown. That is what makes humans effective, and that is what makes you effective too." The princess nodded, her eyes shining. For the first time, she felt that she had found her place, not just as a princess, but as someone capable of learning, thinking, and acting independently. Humans, she realized, had a way of inspiring others simply by showing what was possible. As the council resumed its formal proceedings, Kane and Lyra remained at the observation deck for a while longer, reviewing the anomaly and discussing what had happened. Lyra asked questions, eager to understand every detail, every decision, every calculation that had saved the fleet. Kane answered patiently, reinforcing lessons about courage, analysis, and the balance between thought and action. Hours later, when the princess finally returned to the main hall, she carried with her a new confidence. The delegates noticed it immediately. She moved with a sense of purpose, her glow brighter and steadier than before. Her voice, once timid and polite, now carried authority and clarity. She spoke during debates, offered observations, and suggested solutions based on what she had learned from Kane. Even the most skeptical council members listened with attention. Lyra's actions during the crisis had proven something important. Leadership was not just about age, title, or tradition. It was about courage, intelligence, and the willingness to act when others hesitated. And humans, she realized, embodied this principle perfectly. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, she floated beside Kane once again. "I never knew I could do something like that," she admitted softly. "I felt strong in a way I didn't expect." Kane smiled. "That strength was always inside you. You just needed a moment to see it and a chance to act. Humans often provide guidance, but the courage must come from within. You proved it today." Lyra looked at him thoughtfully. "Humans, they are different, aren't they? Not the strongest, not the largest, but somehow they inspire others." Kane nodded. "Exactly. We inspire not by power, but by action, thought, and courage. And that is why humans have a place in the galaxy. Not just as survivors, but as teachers, catalysts, and examples of what is possible." Lyra's eyes shone with determination. She had learned more in a single day than she had in all her lessons at the palace. The galaxy, vast and complex, no longer seemed like a place she had to fear. Instead, it was a place she could understand, influence, and explore. As the stars continued to glitter outside the observation deck, Lyra made a quiet promise to herself. She would not let fear or protocol limit her. She would act, think, and inspire just as Kane had shown her. And one day, perhaps, she could teach others to do the same. For now, though, she was content to sit beside the human traveler, learning, thinking, and dreaming. The galaxy was wide, full of danger and wonder, but with courage, patience, and a clear mind, anything was possible. And Lyra had just taken her first real step toward embracing it. The council chamber buzzed with energy, but it was different now. Gone was the tension and rigidity that had defined the meeting just hours before. Delegates moved with careful curiosity, observing one another and sharing quiet discussions. Something had changed in the air, something subtle yet undeniable. Lyra stood at the edge of the chamber, her eyes scanning the room. She had returned from the observation deck with a new sense of purpose. The events with the anomaly had tested her courage, her judgment, and her ability to act under pressure. She now understood that being a princess was not just about rules, appearances, or ceremonies. It was about responsibility, action, and inspiration. Beside her, Kane watched quietly, offering the calm presence she had come to rely on. He had guided her through the crisis, shared his insights, and now, simply by being there, reminded her that humans were more than explorers. They were teachers, mentors, and examples of courage. A senior council member, a tall figure with silver-tinted skin and multifaceted eyes, approached Lyra. "Princess," the delegate said, voice formal but respectful, Your actions today have not only saved lives but have demonstrated remarkable judgment. Your ability to act decisively while considering the safety of others is unprecedented among those of your rank. Lyra felt her chest swell, but she remained humble. I could not have done it alone, she said softly. Captain Kane taught me much, and I learned by observing and acting. Humans think differently, they teach through action, and I was lucky to have his guidance. The council member nodded slowly, as if weighing every word. Indeed, they said. There is much we can learn from your example, and from this human's approach. Perhaps it is time we reconsider how leadership is defined across the galaxy. Lyra's skin shimmered slightly with a mixture of pride and determination. She had always believed that humans were unusual, but now she truly understood why. They did not rely solely on tradition, fear, or authority. They relied on courage, logic, and compassion. They inspired others not by force, but by example. As the formal meetings resumed, Lyra noticed the other delegates approaching Kane, asking questions and seeking advice. Some were hesitant, unsure how to interact with a human, while others were more direct, fascinated by his calm authority and insight. Kane answered patiently, never raising his voice, never belittling anyone. He explained principles of problem-solving, observation, and courage. Slowly, he demonstrated what Lyra had seen all along. Humans influenced others through thought, action, and patience, not by demanding obedience. Lyra felt a surge of inspiration. She realized that she could apply these lessons to her own role as a princess. Leadership was not simply a title or a throne. It was the ability to guide, to inspire, and to act when needed. She had felt the weight of expectation before, but now it seemed lighter, replaced with possibility and purpose. During a brief pause in the council proceedings, Lyra floated toward Kane. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice carrying the sincerity of someone who had learned more than any lesson at a palace or academy could teach. "For everything today. For showing me how to act, to think, to be brave." Kane smiled gently. "The courage was always inside you, Lyra. I only helped you see it. Humans can guide, teach, and inspire, but the action must come from within." Lyra considered his words, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she felt that her identity was more than a title. She was a student, a thinker, a decision-maker, and someone capable of influencing the galaxy in ways she had never imagined. And it was not just her own growth that thrilled her. It was the potential to inspire others, just as Kane had inspired her. The council resumed its sessions, but Lyra found herself looking at the proceedings differently. Every delegate's action, every word spoken, seemed more understandable. She saw patterns, motivations, and possibilities where others saw confusion and hierarchy. Kane had taught her not just to act, but to observe and learn, and now she could see the world with new eyes. Later, when the formal meetings ended, the council members began to disperse. Delegates whispered among themselves, clearly impressed by what had transpired. Some approached Lyra to offer congratulations, others sought to understand her perspective, and a few simply observed quietly, reflecting on how a young princess and a human had changed the tone of the day. Lyra returned to the observation deck, Kane following. The stars stretched endlessly outside the panoramic window, serene and infinite. She floated close to him, her skin dimming gently as she relaxed. "I think I understand something important now," she said softly. "Leadership, courage, learning, it isn't about age or title. It's about thinking, acting, and inspiring others. Humans, they have a way of showing that without even trying to dominate." Kane nodded, his gaze fixed on the stars. "Yes. Humans are not always the strongest or the most powerful, but we influence through action, example, and courage. That is what makes us unique, and it is why humans survive and thrive in ways many cannot imagine." Lyra considered this, her mind brimming with thoughts. "Then maybe I can be that kind of leader too," she said. "Not just for my palace, not just for my people, but for others who need courage, guidance, or hope." Kane smiled. "I believe you can. You've already shown it today. And remember, learning never ends. The more you explore, observe, and act, the more you will grow. Leadership is a journey, not a destination." Lyra floated to the window, gazing at the fleet below, each ship slowly returning to routine operations. "It feels different now," she murmured. "Before, everything seemed so rigid. Now it seems possible. Anything is possible." Kane leaned back, quietly observing her glow with satisfaction. "That is the power of courage and curiosity. When you face the unknown with both, it opens doors. You have learned this today, Lyra, and now you carry it with you wherever you go. The princess's skin shimmered brighter as she smiled. I want to keep learning, I want to keep exploring, I want to understand other worlds, other people, and myself. You will, Cain said simply. And in time you may teach others to do the same. That is the way humans inspire, not by force, but by example. As the hours passed, the observation deck remained quiet except for the soft hum of the engines and the distant twinkling of stars. Lyra sat beside Cain, her mind racing with ideas, plans, and questions. She felt alive in a way she had never experienced, filled with purpose and hope. The galaxy no longer seemed distant or frightening. It was a place to understand, explore, and influence. Finally, Lyra spoke, her voice thoughtful and steady. Do you think humans can really make a difference in the galaxy, even when surrounded by beings older and more powerful? Cain turned to her, his expression calm and certain. Yes. Humans make a difference not because of power, but because of courage, thought, and the willingness to act. We inspire, guide, and sometimes teach others simply by showing what is possible. That is how we survive, and how we help others survive too. Lyra felt a surge of confidence. She had seen it firsthand today. One human had helped her see her own potential. One human had guided her, taught her, and inspired her. And now she realized she could carry that lesson forward, not just for herself, but for her people, her council, and perhaps even the wider galaxy. The princess leaned back, floating gently beside Cain. For the first time, she felt the true meaning of freedom. Not freedom from rules, but freedom to act, to think, and to inspire. The lessons she had learned today would stay with her forever, shaping her as a leader, as a thinker, and as someone capable of influencing others. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, silent witnesses to the transformation of a young princess. Inside, Lyra felt a quiet certainty. She was no longer merely a figurehead, a child of royal duty, or a symbol to others. She was a participant, a learner, a guide, and a force of courage. Cain remained beside her, calm as always, his presence a reminder that humans were more than explorers. They were mentors, teachers, and examples of what courage, patience, and wisdom could accomplish. Together they watched the stars, quiet in their shared understanding that the galaxy was vast, full of challenges and wonders, but also full of possibilities. And for Lyra, the journey was just beginning. She had learned that courage was not about strength, but about action. That leadership was not about authority, but about guiding and inspiring. That humans, through their simple combination of thought, bravery, and empathy, could show others a way forward. The princess felt a smile spread across her face as she spoke softly. Thank you, Captain Cain, for everything. He smiled in return, a quiet warmth in his eyes. No, Lyra, thank you for listening, learning, and acting. You are the one who made the difference today. Remember that. As the council ships drifted through the endless expanse of space, calm once more, Lyra and Cain sat together, gazing at the stars. The galaxy was infinite, full of mysteries, dangers, and possibilities. And now she was ready to meet it, one thought, one choice, and one brave action at a time. The young alien princess had discovered something extraordinary, that humans were not just explorers of space, but explorers of courage, wisdom, and hope. And with their guidance and example, she knew that she could inspire change, lead with strength, and face the unknown with unwavering determination. For Lyra, the stars were no longer distant. They were not just points of light or symbols of duty. They were opportunities to learn, to act, to grow, and to inspire. And as she floated beside the human who had shown her this path, she felt, for the first time, the limitless potential of her own future. The galaxy stretched on, endless and brilliant. And Lyra, guided by courage, curiosity, and the example of humans, would face it, ready for whatever wonders or challenges lay ahead.